Hello guys, I am back with another episode. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, I received it. It was forwarded to me by one of our admins. The message reads like this: I have a worm that is in my bicep, how I sold my soul to the devil. My brother Nashi, I have a confession that I want to make. This has been on my mind and my life is like a living hell. I don't sleep day and night. It doesn't matter. I can't even fall asleep. My soul is so troubled because of what I did. I wish I could just turn back the hands of time, but that I cannot do. I have tried to reverse this deal that I did with the devil, but unfortunately in the devil's workshop there is no such thing as a reverse gear. When I was told that this ritual that I am about to do, there is no reverse, it's only going forward from now going onwards. I thought that this was just a joke, but when you are doing these things, sometimes they can actually make you to do a very simple ritual, but you will live to regret. I have a worm that was inserted into my hand. That worm stays in my hand, and this worm, it seems as if it will be sucking my blood until I will be dead. This is what happened to me. I had moved to Johannesburg in the year 2008 when things were not going on so well across Limpopo. I am a teacher by profession, and I got myself a very good job for about 3 years in the Department of Education. Then one day I was told that I was no more needed at my work. My job was no more. Looks like it had suddenly vanished. What pained me the most is that when I arrived at that school, since I was a foreign teacher, I thought that indeed I had finally found my place. But what I didn't realize was that I was just being used so as to train other teachers. When the school saw that the other teachers were now equally qualified as I was, that is when I was told that I was no longer needed. My job was no more. And it really hurt me because I was never registered. So there was no way I could go. I could not even go to the Department of Labor so that I can report my case. I was only employed by word of mouth. I was never registered. This thing, it really hurt me. I had a very beautiful life when I was still working at that school. Me, my wife, and my children at that time, we could even afford to have a very good life. My children were attending good schools. We even had food in the house at all the times. My wife was really happy. For the first time in my life, when I was working at that school, I could even afford to have some whiskey in my house. We could afford anything till that day when I was called to the principal's office, and he started to give me a lot of excuses why the school could not employ me anymore. That is when I knew that my employment at that school, it was never put on paper, and they told me that the reason why they were able to fast track my employment, it was because the employment was never taken through the Department of Education. The deal had been done under the desk. This is what the principal told me. I felt like I wanted to cry. I took it lightly, and I told myself that everything was going to be okay. And when I arrived back home, when I told my wife that I had lost my job, she thought that since I was working at that school, I was going to get another job. I was even scared to tell her that when I had gotten employed at that school, my papers had never been submitted at the Department of Education. I felt like I was a fool who had been used, only to realize that I spent half of that year just jobless, walking around looking for another employment. But things got worse that I had to send my wife and my kids back home to my parents, and they went with nothing. When I went with them to the bus, they got onto the bus with nothing, looking at other people who were traveling back home, whilst they were loaded with groceries, but my kids and my wife, they had nothing. You know how much I had to give my wife and my kids so that they can buy some food whilst they'll be on their journey going back to Zim. I only had 130 rands in my pocket, so I gave my wife 100 rands and I was left with only 30 rands because that was the last of our money. They didn't even have food and my parents had to fend for them, and which of my parents were old retired people and they had their own struggles. I went from renting a 4-bedroomed house to a friend's back room. I kept on looking for a job, but nothing came up, so much that my friend told me that since I know that you cannot pay your rentals, what you will do is that you have to look after the place. So when everyone would have gone to their workplaces, then I would wake up and I would start to clean around the place. There were many days when I'll be busy sweeping, then I'll just stop, and as I'll be holding a rake, I will ask myself that, is this what an experienced maths teacher came to do to South Africa? I tried to pray, but when you are really desperate, I noticed something, that God will never answer your prayers. I prayed, Brother Nashi. There were many days when I would even pray, when I would see that in the house, if God doesn't answer my prayer, I will die of starvation, but God will choose for me to starve. On another days, I would go for 2 to 3 days without eating anything. What I used to do is that I'll just cook some soft porridge, then I'll put some salt into the water, or I'll buy those small packets of knickknacks. Then I will open one small packet of knickknacks and I will just eat pap with those knickknacks. Life was really hard. At that point, I had lost all hope. That is when my wife called me one day and she told me that she was going to send me some numbers because she was given those numbers by someone else. She told me that there was this other friend of ours whom I used to teach with at this other certain rural school back in Zim, and now he was a very successful teacher who was teaching at an esteemed private school in Johannesburg. Immediately, I made some plans so as to call that number. The first day when I called that number, it was never picked up, but after a couple of days, that is when my friend picked up the call. And I told him how desperate I was just for food. He told me that he was going to come and pick me up. So he did. He came and he picked me up. When he came, as I got into his car, I thought that now this was going to be my season. And I was ready to worship the Lord again. I was then invited to a party by that friend of mine. Since I was jobless and since he had already assisted me with some money to buy some groceries, I had no reason to deny his offer. I was gonna get food too, since I was hungry for many days. When we arrived at that place, he then told me that we were supposed to go to Midrand, called Kyalami Gold Estate. My brother, when we arrived there, that is when I realized that I was suffering, but the rest of the world was living in luxury. This is what poor people do not understand about rich people. Those rich people, they don't even know that out there are poor people, because what happens to those rich people is that they live in their own world like a closed bubble. The shopping malls where they go, they only meet with rich people, so they don't even know that out in the world they are poor people. They think that everyone is as rich as they are. When we were in that estate, I saw the most luxurious houses. Most of the people there were from Eastern Africa, and it was a Mercedes-Benz party. Can you even believe it that there are people who host parties for their cars? Everyone was driving Mercedes, and I'm not talking like 2004 models. I am talking of the AMG latest models. They were wearing very expensive apparel, and I noticed that I was lost. The party went on, and my friend, the one who had invited me, then told me that if I liked what I saw, he could do something or make a plan for me. I really needed a job, and I told him that he would have played a big role in my life. He then set up an appointment for me at this temple in Midrand. He told me that the following Wednesday he was coming to pick me up for the appointment. Those people, my brother, they don't even mind traveling for a very long distance so that they can just perform the simplest of the most simple rituals. Those people, they can even travel all the way from Durban going to Musina so that they can just perform a ritual like just dropping a coin in the middle of the road. And at the place where they would have dropped the coin, an accident is supposed to happen. The accident might not happen tomorrow or next month, but at that spot where they would have dropped the coin, an accident will be bound to happen. When Wednesday came, we went. I thought that the temple had a school and they needed a teacher. When we went in, there was a man who was old enough to be my father, but this man, he was not of our black culture. He was of the Indian race. But that guy, he was a black Indian. He spoke to me so softly, and he told me that this was a very simple, easy to make money, and I didn't need to work. It is when I began to see what was happening. He then did light some incense and he started to do things, and my question was, is there any blood to be spilled? And he said, no blood. He told me that every night at 12 midnight I will be getting cash, and I wondered how. It was at that moment that he took a needle, then he injected some substance on my bicep on the left hand, to be more precise. Then he told me to burn some incense in my room. I went back and my friend told me to relax because I had a lot of questions to ask him. I went back home, and a week later there was so much money, strange money from the different parts of the world. Sometimes money will just appear, then disappear, whilst it will be there right next to my pillow. The only money that will be left in my room, it was only rands and US dollars. The rest of the money that were from the different parts of the world, they would just disappear. I then told my wife and my kids who were in Zim to come back and join me, but I was given some instructions not to send them any money. So I told my wife that she was supposed to make a plan so that they can come back here to South Africa. I don't know what kind of a plan she did. All that I told her is that I had recently gotten hold of another employment opportunity, and they were supposed to come back here to South Africa as soon as possible. So they did. I then moved to an apartment in Midrand because my friend stayed there too. That is how I left the dusty streets of that place where I was staying with my other teacher friend. My brother, my life became perfect financially wise, and I joined the Mercedes family. The life is just a life full of parties, and every fortnight we do parties. Some of the parties are called all white parties. We were burning some incense and sacrificing to some Indian gods. Now my problem is the worm in my hand. It started small and it has been feeding on my blood. So I was told that a lot of my friends who did this ritual, usually in the 20th year of their life, they will die. And I don't even know how many years I am left with before I die. When I approached the temple master, because I wanted to know if there was anything that I could do so that this worm can be removed from my arm, if I could sacrifice anyone in my place, but I was told that when I made this deal, I sacrificed my body to the devil, so I should just let it go and let the devil do whatever he wants to do with my body. My body is a property that belongs to the devil. Yo, dear listeners, where there was a message that I received, then I had to ask one of our admins to give us a translation of this message. If you have any story that you want to share with us, please do not hesitate to contact us via our email address. I'll be back with another episode.